on Earth? I'll give you the answer. Concrete. This is the Concrete Logic Podcast. Have you ever stopped to think about the sidewalks, driveways, bridges, or the buildings around you? They're all made from concrete. So why don't we discuss it more? In each episode of Concrete Logic, we'll explore a unique concrete-related topic with the help of industry professionals shaping the trade's future. We'll talk with suppliers, contractors, architects, engineers, specialists, and even proponents of competing materials. We'll get their views on concrete and their visions for its future. So get ready to mix things up with Concrete Logic, where we turn the spotlight on the material that's everywhere but often overlooked. This is the Concrete Logic Podcast. And now, here's your host, Seth Tandit.
Welcome to another episode of the Concrete Logic Podcast. And today I have Abigail Olson, and she is a ready mix driver. First one we've had on the podcast, so that's exciting. She's also an author. She happens to be 24 years old. You're still 24?
Yeah.
All right. So we're going to talk to her today. She's going to share a little bit about why she chose to be a ready mix truck driver. And also share a little insight on what it is like day to day, because all we see, at least for me as a concrete contractor, they pull up on site and I'm yelling at them why they didn't get here earlier. So that's my only insight on what a ready mix driver goes through. But so Abigail's going to help with that today too as well. But before we get started, as I always do, just remind you on how you can support the podcast. And the reason why I ask you to do this is because we don't have any advertisers. We don't have any sponsorships. So this podcast is up to you to support. So there's three things you can do. One is you go to our, please share the podcast. So after you listen to this episode today, please share it with a colleague or a coworker. The second thing you can do is if you go to concretelogicpodcast.com, there are two ways you can get a hold of me. There's a contact button in the upper part of the page. So it says contact, click on that. And when you do that, that's like sending me an email. And then the other way you can get a hold of me is there's a little microphone symbol or whatever on the bottom right-hand corner of the homepage. Click on that. That's like sending me a voicemail. And what I'm looking for are topic or guest suggestions. So like today, Abigail, her uncle reached out to me and said, you need to have her on the podcast. So that's what I'm looking for. I'm looking for topic or guest suggestions. And the third way you can support the show is on the Concrete Logic Podcast homepage. There's a donate button. So if you get some value out of that, whatever dollar amount you think we brought to you today, or any of the 100 episodes plus, if any of those provide you any value, please feel free to go to the homepage, click the donate button. You can give any amount. All right, Abigail. I'm actually 30 seconds quicker than I usually am. So we got an extra 30 seconds today. All right. So Abigail, you are a concrete ready mix truck driver.
Yeah.
Why'd you do that?
So when I was in high school, I really wanted to be a driver. And I knew that's what I wanted to do as soon as I got out of high school. But I actually had envisioned over the road driving. And so when I got out of high school, I got my CDL and I started applying for jobs. And then I realized that there's the federal regulation of you can't cross state lines until you're 21 in a commercial vehicle. And so I was like, okay, well, I'll just look for local jobs. And a lot of them only had, or because of insurance, they wouldn't insure till at least 21, sometimes 23, like the current company I work for, hires at minimum age of 23. So it ended up being lucky for me. I applied like the day after I turned 23. I turned 23 on not this past January, but the January before, January 13th, and I started working there January 31st. And so that was kind of nice timing, but there was anyway, but applying for jobs was very difficult when I was 18. Um, and uh, and I know you wanted to talk about this some, but I wrote like a little op-ed in the Richmond paper about like well, actually a different trade organization had reached out and said like, yeah, if you want to write this article in the Richmond Times-Dispatch, that would be very good because we're trying to lobby for those rules to be changed. And so I wrote that article, and Tim Kaine reached out to me or whatever about it, and then that trade organization, because like they would talk about it in their meetings, and then people would be like, oh yeah, we read that article or whatever. And so they invited me up to their conference in DC when they were lobbying, and I spoke at their conference a little bit, and then they took me around to like meet some of the Congress people to talk about, how it would benefit to have a lower that age
Yeah.
restriction. Yeah.
And it hasn't changed, right? It's still the same.
Not that I know of. I'm not
Yeah.
really following because I'm over that age, but I
Yeah.
think, I don't know. Now I have mixed feelings 'cause I'm like, I am a lot better driver now than I was at 18. But like sometimes like I do know people who college isn't for them, and I really want to be able to say, I love driving, like I love my driving job, like I really think you should consider it. And then I'm like, they'd have to wait years to do that. So,
Yeah.
but then for specifically concrete driver, I actually didn't even know what it was until I started driving it. I was just applying for driving jobs, and I at that point I was like, okay, I don't want to go over the road. That sounds like a terrible life. And I was like, and all my friends had like 9 to 5 Monday through Friday jobs. So I was like, I want something that I can like plan on weekends with them or whatever. And so I was like, okay, I'm gonna look for something Monday through Friday and during the day. And besides like dump truck driving, which I felt like there were a lot of like you needed experience for that. This was like kind of the only job that would hire that was Monday through Friday, and local, like no overnight, and yeah, it was no experience. So
Huh.
yeah,
Can we go back to when you got your CDL, which is commercial driver's license, right?
yes.
How long does that take, and what does it take to do that?
Um, yeah, so it took me 2 months. I started mid June, and then I took the test and passed on like mid August after high school. And basically we had to learn the parts. So I got my class A, which some people don't know, like the class A is for like the tractor trailers, and then the class B is just like straight vehicles like dump trucks, school buses, concrete mixers. Um, but I went for my class A, and um, one of the things that we have to do is the pre-trip inspection. So we have to like take like undo that hood or whatever and be able to name a lot of the parts and like what they're supposed to look like. And then we go all the way down the truck and name different parts and that they're working well. And then we go in the cab and we have to have certain things. And there was also like a brake test that we had to do, but basically just all of that I just had no knowledge of before. And then it was the pre-trip inspection. Oh, we had to get a driver's. I remember when they first asked me, they were like, at the school, they were like, "Oh, do you have your learner's permit yet?" And I was like, "I have my driver's license." And they were like, "No, your CDL learner's permit." And I was like, "Oh no, I didn't even know I had to get that." And they're like, "So you had to go take 3 tests at the DMV." Um, and I just like read the DMV manual for that, and I can't remember what the 3 are. I know the one that took me 3 times to pass was the air brakes test. I just could not figure that out. But there were two other written tests that I don't remember what they were. So there was that to get the learner's permit. And then that's when they could take us on the road and practice driving around corners and stuff, because on the test, if you hit a curb, you automatically fail. And we had some guys come back like, I hit a curve, we got to do it again. And then there was also a like a backing portion, which is what we spent most of our time doing. And it was, first you have to do like just straight back, and then they're like cones down a lane and you just go straight back. And then they actually had like two lanes of cones, and so you have to, I can't remember if you start in one, but you basically have to like go back like this. And so that was like surprisingly difficult, figuring out just the right way to turn that. And then the last part, which was the most intimidating and the most difficult, was parallel parking the vehicle, and they had like a little spot set up. I guess they said that was new because people like at truck stops were like nicking other cars or nicking other trucks, and so they wanted people to. So that's where I spent most of my days with that.
Yeah. Do you remember how much time you spent practicing or getting driving time, I guess, before you got your CDL?
Driving time, like on the road, it wasn't a whole lot, but it was a very tricky section. We basically went around the block, not like it was like a big block, but there were like there was like this one turn. Well, there was train tracks, so we had to like practice like slowing down, rolling the windows down, like looking both ways, and like not shifting gears on it. But then there was also like, when you're turning right sometimes and there's like a concrete triangle and there's like one lane. Was it one lane? I feel like it was something like that. It was very difficult to like not hit the curb when you were going through there. So even though it was short, it was enough practice. It was like busy enough and enough like tight turns and stuff. But I don't remember. I don't think it was a whole lot because I had to get my learner's permit first.
Yeah.
Maybe like 10 to 20 hours.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, that all sounds like a lot of work and a little intimidating to me. I mean, when I was a kid, when I was getting my normal driver's license, I failed my first time. So I applaud you for doing that. So, I mean, yeah, it's just yeah, when your uncle sent over there, I was like, wow, it's just amazing. So you just the challenge of not being able to drive over federal state lines.
Yeah.
And that kind of led you to being the concrete driver. And you've been doing that for how long now?
A year and a half.
Year and a half.
Yeah.
And I assume you're liking it so far, or?
Yeah, I love it. Yeah. I do love it.
So what do you like so much about? Can you share like what your day typically looks like?
Yeah, sure. So I think the hardest part to get used to was we don't have like a set come in at a certain time schedule. So basically we get a text the afternoon before of what time to be at work the next day. And so what I do, because I like my 8 hours, is I'm like, okay, I have to be in at this time, and then I'm gonna wake up an hour and a half before that. So I'm gonna fall asleep 8 hours before that. So I get to work. The earliest I've ever had to be in is like 2:30 in the morning, but that is the earliest. Like that's only happened once. There have been a good number of like being at 3 in the morning, but there have also been a good number of like being at like 6 or 7. But if I do get a 7 o'clock, I'm like, oh, good, I get to sleep in. And so anyway, it's like kind of a wide range of times, but I would say usually it's like between 5:30 and 7, but not unusual go a lot earlier. And so then we just get in, we do our pre-trip, and then we back under the hole, which is like basically like a conveyor belt that puts all the ingredients in on a conveyor belt that puts it in the big hopper at the top, and we
Mm-hmm.
have it going really fast, and we fill up our water tank, get our ticket, look at the directions, see where we're going. A lot of times, like, we know where we're going because we've been there a lot. And then one of the things, because he said, what do I like about it? One of the things that I really like in the mornings is I feel like almost every single morning I get to see the sunrise, and I really like that. And I also really like the being outside and the fresh air. Like when I show up, especially when there's like a crisp in the air and I see all the trucks like turning and like the lights, like it just makes me feel really alive.
Uh,
And I'm like, yeah, let's go like deliver this concrete. But but that depends. Like if we're in at 3 in the morning, it'll be a while to the sunrise. But then we just like pull forward and somebody else backs into the hole. And when we pull forward, there's another hose where we kind of wash down the truck and then put in water into the load to kind of get the slump right. Because on our ticket it says the slump that the customer's ordered, and then we're off for the job. And then they're um and that's like another thing that I like about the job is that like I've gotten to know people, but I never know when I'm going to see them, so it kind of feels like I'm seeing friends. And I'm like, oh, hi. And then I also like, because then when we get out to the job, we do whatever they want. I mean, like you said, getting mad at us for being late. I don't know if we're late. I only know if we're late because sometimes they'll be like, oh, are you busy today? And I'm like, I don't know. Like we can't see the dispatch screen, so I don't know what time, how much we have going on. And I'm like, are we, like, are we late? Like, what time were we supposed to be here? And they're like, oh, you're supposed to be here 3 hours ago. And I was like, oh, oh, okay, well, I'm sorry. And they're like, it's okay. It always is always like that. And then like I figure out what they need, and then I do that. And that's kind of fun to like. It feels like teamwork a little bit to like work
yeah.
together, which sometimes can be frustrating, but can also be really awesome. Um, and then yeah, and then we wash down our truck at the end of every load. We
Yeah.
like wash down the chutes and the blades inside. And that's something else that I really like about my job is that um I like that we're not just like sitting all the time. I don't know if this is true, but I did hear that it's like healthier to like get up at least like every hour. And I feel like this job is like exactly that. Like I feel like I'm almost never sitting for more than an hour. And like when I get out, I'll, get out and climb the ladder or put water in the load, so it's like active enough that I don't feel like I'm just like rotting. But then we also see people doing really, really hard work with the concrete. And I'm like, okay, well, I'm not killing myself or breaking my back. Like I'm just standing up every hour,
Yeah.
which is what I've heard is helpful. So I do like
Yeah.
yeah.
How many is your typical travel time from where you are? I assume I know we're both in Richmond, so I kind of know
Yeah.
this already, but I'll ask. But is it like 20, 25 minutes? Is that usually your longest drive?
The longest drive I've done with a load is an hour, but I think I've only done that a couple of times because I was
Uh-huh.
pushing it, I think, because the concrete hardens on the truck. And yeah, I would say typically it's like 20 to 30 minutes.
Okay. And then so you deliver a load and then you turn around and go right back, right? Go back
Yeah. Yeah. Right
and
back to the plant. Or the company I work for has several plants like throughout like Central Virginia. And so sometimes they'll send a message on the tablet like, oh, go to the Doswell plant or the Bottoms Ridge plant or something like that. And then, we'll go there and get a load there and then go 20 to 30 minutes away from that new plant.
Oh, okay, cool. So they have a
Yeah.
little tablet that you they tell you what your next mission is, I guess.
Yeah, basically. And
Yeah.
then yeah, but the default is to go back to the same plant. And but um
How many loads do you think you deliver typically on a day? How many?
I would say on a slow day it's like 3 or 4, and then on a like a much busier day it'd be like 5 to 7. So
Yeah.
4 to 6 is typical, I think. Yeah.
Yeah. It goes by fast.
It goes by really quickly. Yeah. And then that's like, well, the driving part is another thing that I like about my job, is because sometimes I say it just feels like endless media consumption because I just get to listen to like audiobooks or music. And one time I was listening to the radio and, like it announced like, oh, this artist just dropped their new album. And I was like, oh, really? And then I just like went to that album and I just like pressed play and I was like, oh, I love that I get to do this. And,
And a podcast, right? You're
and
listening
a
to this
podcast. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Oh, that's cool. So the training that you get so far, I'm sure that you're constantly getting some kind of training. Are
Mhm.
they teaching you um like how, when to spin the drum, or how to spin the drum,
Oh
or
yeah. So there's like this little like lever thing that controls like if you're discharging or keeping it in the drum.
oh,
And it actually also controls the speed at which it's doing that. And so and then there's another thing where it like turns up the drum. And so if you have it all the way forward, the lever all the way forward, and then you turn up the drum, it goes like really, really, really fast. You can't drive it that way. That's when we're getting loaded or adding water.
mhm.
Um, and then as soon as you hit the brake, it like goes back to the normal fast speed. Um, and they talked a lot about like when um we're going. So like when I'm cleaning, I also have it like the at the fastest, but when I'm driving, you want it at kind of like a slower, steady speed, but you don't want it so slow that it could come out the back if you're going up a hill. So that took a while to get used to adjust the speed and when you're driving. And then I remember when I first started, like you start on the 25-mile-an-hour road going at the plant and you have your speed. But then when you get on the highway, the drum actually spins faster when you start going faster. So
Oh,
then you like slow it down, but then you have to watch it still because you, when you get off the highway, then it's going way too slow. And sometimes, like I heard that sometimes it can happen where if you're not paying attention and you don't speed it up, like it'll start coming out the back. And so that's another thing that we have our chute pointed to the right so that if something does happen and concrete comes out the back, it'll go on the side of the road and it won't like mess up the roads too much.
yeah.
But yeah, then
Right.
you have to speed it back up when you get off the highway.
Huh.
And so like I'm always like looking out like at the driver's side mirror to check on my speed. Yeah. And then sometimes when it's been a long day, I'll like be in my car and I'll look out and like, wait, what am I looking for again? And I was like, oh yeah, I'm not in a mixer. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. You're not in the truck.
Yeah. So yeah.
So that challenge, we talked about it a little bit earlier about getting younger folks to drive concrete trucks, or um, is there, when you were up there, or since you started driving the concrete truck, have you thought of ways that we could kind of fix that problem? Um, I know you said you're a way better driver than when you started, obviously, and that goes to me, that goes with any career. I mean, no matter what you do, you get better as you get experience. So, but it's definitely want to encourage folks to pursue and then, like yourself, wanted to drive a truck. So how do we fix that problem by giving folks that opportunity, but at the same time, obviously keep the. I guess they think at that age you've driven enough that you have the experience and you're a safe driver by that point, or and I imagine the insurance cost to cover an 18-year-old driving uh, a ready mix truck or um, a long distance truck or whatever, it's probably pretty expensive. But have you thought of that and what we could do to fix that?
I have not thought about it actually. Um
Like when
I think
someone first starts with you guys on the concrete, they don't just go, hey, jump in that truck and start driving? Do you ride along for,
yeah,
yeah,
yeah. So my trainer when I first started, like he had me drive like a very short distance and then he was like, okay, you did good. So, we'll do a longer distance, but it still wasn't too long. Um, and we do when we train, and that's what I did when I was training somebody as I started um at shorter distances too. And so they do have like when we're training or when we're being trained, they you start driving empty first and then you start driving with more yards on the truck. Um, and then eventually you get up to being able to do like a full load. So they
yeah,
do like work you up that way. Um, and I know when I was younger, like when I was 18 and like people weren't hiring me, I was like, there should be like a test where like if you like some driving test where it's like, okay, if I pass it, then it shows that I have the driving abilities that they want. But I haven't really thought more about that because I felt like, well, if, passing the CDL test isn't enough to prove that I can drive it safely. They should have more like tests or make it longer or something to prove that I can drive it safely.
yeah,
I don't, yeah, I don't know. But yeah, we did work slowly in the mix to get up
yeah.
to it. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I kind of understand both sides. You definitely want to have
Mm,
some driving experience, but at the same time, there's 30-year-old people that probably shouldn't drive those trucks. You know what I mean?
yeah.
18 or 30, you probably shouldn't drive those things because I know for me, for one, I shouldn't jump in one of those things and start driving them because I haven't had any training or anything. So I think if you're getting that same amount of training, you should get that same opportunity. So
Hmm.
maybe they just need to, like when you go get your driver's license, like at 16, and there's kids that are interested in doing that, maybe you start training them then, right?
Hmm.
Get them in
Yeah.
there because I know like um around here around Richmond, and I'm sure it's like this across the country, is there's high schools that'll throw you in a piece of heavy equipment if you want to and learn how to do it when you're still in high school.
Oh wow.
So yeah, so I, I would think you could start doing it the same way. I'm not saying we
Hmm.
need a bunch of 16, 17-year olds out there driving
Yeah.
big rigs or anything, but I'm saying you could start that training then. So by the time they graduate from high school, say, hey, I did this training, I- you know,
Hmm.
I can, I'm ahead of my peers in this aspect. Just like, kids can take college credits in high school. I think you should be able to do the same thing. And I'm sure
Hmm.
there's somebody out there doing this. It's if it's obvious
I
to me, it's not an original idea. I promise you. Somebody out there
yeah.
has
Well,
figured it out.
I have like now that I've started, I've met some people and they're like, oh, there was one pump truck driver who he was like, oh yeah, I've been doing this for 10 years. And I was like, how old are you? Like, you look kind of young. He's like, oh, I'm 25. I was like, how have you been doing this for 10 years? You're like 15? Like, was that legal? And he was like, oh, well, they like, they were just, they just like set me up and I learned how to do the controls. And then I learned how to set up or something, like he was learning. And then when he turned 18, he knew everything else. And then he was able to drive the truck. And
Yeah.
so I have heard stories like that where they and and then I think there's another truck driver when he started at 18. So I don't know, maybe that's the way to get it when you're 18 is the pump truck. But and then there was somebody else who I met who was like, "Oh yeah, I've been driving, I was a mover for a couple years or whatever." And I was like, "You look really young. How old are you?" And he was like, "Oh, yeah, I am really young." And I was like, "Were you allowed to be doing that?" And he was like, "Mm-mm." And so, yeah. So I
Yeah.
don't know how much, yeah, people, but there should just be a way people can just
Yeah.
go ahead and do it. Yeah.
Yeah, in the farms in Virginia, I mean, there's all kinds, kids are out there helping where they can. So
Hmm.
sometimes you're driving or operating machinery that you wouldn't be allowed to off the farm to help
Hmm.
out. So it's
Yeah.
that might be one of them too. Well,
Yeah.
cool.
Hmm.
Well,
And I've also learned that like the most important part is like paying attention. Like if you pay attention when you're driving, that's
mhm,
important. Um,
yeah,
yeah. So
definitely.
I don't know how that would, maybe, yeah, it just comes with experience too.
Yeah.
And sorry, what were you gonna say?
Well, I was going to ask you, is there anything else we should know about being a concrete ready mix driver?
Hmm.
That we didn't hit on today that you want to share with the folks before we end today? I told you 30 minutes goes by fast.
It does go by quickly. I don't know. I guess something that I didn't share that, well, I don't know how much y'all know about it because y'all are concrete, but when I talk to people outside, like, or who don't know, we have like different kinds of jobs, like tailgating jobs versus like pump truck jobs. I don't
Mhm.
know if y'all know about um that, but people usually are interested in what that
Yeah,
is.
if you want to share about that. I mean, I know I know what you're talking about, but I don't know your perspective. Like again, I know what we see when you guys pull up, and to us, it's truck showing up. It's got concrete in it. We got to get it
Uh,
either dumped into the hole or into the pump truck or what. That's how we look at it. We're like,
yeah.
hey, guy, get your test done, get your slump test done, get your air done, so we can get it into the pump truck, so we can
Yeah.
get it up on the deck. That's that's our mentality. So
Okay.
what is it? What is it like for you if you were tailgating versus if you were putting in a pump truck?
So like the pump trucks are the easiest. They tell you, okay, it's over there, back up like this, and you just back right up, and then you
Uh,
stand and you just pour it in from the outside into the pump truck's hopper. But then like tailgating, you usually have to put on like extension chutes basically.
mhm,
And those can be heavy, but they have had like lighter ones now. But if you get them too light, they'll bend. So you still need some heavy ones. And then people who know nothing about concrete, they're very fascinated by how they're like hand signals that like people
oh yeah,
outside the truck know and that we know to
uh,
control the chute, like moving it up and down and locking it and stuff, and then controlling the speed. Um, and those just tend to take a lot more like effort and focus because they're usually like obstacles, and you're like, okay, now back your truck all the way this way around this turn, around this thing, and then we'll do it. Okay, now go around there and back it up there. So just is a lot more like um just effort and like going around things. But
yeah.
it's usually not too bad because everyone's helping you because nobody wants you to run into something.
They want what you got in the truck.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. They don't want any damage done. So
Yeah.
usually we're all on the same page. But yeah, it can be fun.
Yeah.
There are like different types, and sometimes we don't know what we're doing when we show up. So
Yeah.
until we show up. Yeah.
Well, I know you've been doing it for a short time, but I can tell you're a concrete person. You love concrete, so that's great.
Yeah, I really do. Yeah, it's fun.
That's
Yeah.
awesome. So hopefully my kids listen to this and they say, "Hey, there's even younger people that think concrete's cool." See?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. One young person, but yeah.
Oh, there's a lot of them out there.
Okay.
So yeah, no, I appreciate you coming on the show. I probably failed to say this earlier, but you wrote a book too. Can you tell us a little bit about the book and where people can find it? And if people want to reach out to you, I'm sure they will once they hear this.
So basically the best way to reach out to me is through my website, which is the whole thing is abigailaliceolson.com. Should I spell that out? Or?
No. I'll put it in the show notes. So when I release the podcast, I'll put a link in there for everybody to click on. It'll go right to your website.
Yeah, so that's the best way to reach me. I got rid of all my social media.
I like that idea. That's an awesome idea.
Yeah, I watched that.
I like you more and more the more you talk about what you're doing.
Thanks. Yeah, I watched that Social Dilemma on Netflix like 3 times, and then I was like, okay, like with each time I got rid of more. But
awesome.
My social media. But yeah, so I wrote a book. It was a long time ago. It was like 4 years ago. I was like 20. That was like something that I tried when I was like, okay, maybe, this driving isn't for me. I'm not having a lot of success at this age. And it was a memoir and like short stories, kind of more like vignettes. And basically like when I talk about it, the thing that gets people the most excited to hear it is when I say, well, basically I wrote it when my boyfriend at the time broke up on me on the same day that I didn't want to be a truck driver anymore. And then I took the next flight to Mexico. And down there, I like wrote this book. And so it's basically about all of that drama. And it ended up getting, I went with a small publisher in Richmond. So there was like a big indie awards, and it was a finalist for women's issues, nonfiction, and short story collections.
That's awesome.
Yeah, that's what that was.
Yeah, I ordered a copy today, so my daughter's going to get it so she can read it. That's awesome.
I appreciate it. And it can be ordered. It's called the Hay Wagon, and it can be ordered through any bookstore. They probably won't like have it, but you can order it through any or Amazon or Barnes & Noble, whatever. Yeah.
Cool. Well, great. Well, I appreciate you sharing today, and I hope we stay in contact and follow your journey. And yeah, I appreciate it. And folks,
thank you for having me on here. It was kind of fun to talk about concrete. I love talking about my job.
Yeah, no, if you like doing this, I'll bring you back on. You want to talk about something you have, it's anytime. All right, folks, until next time, let's keep it concrete.
Thanks for joining us for another episode of the Concrete Logic Podcast. If you got value from the show, here's how you can provide value back to support the show. Visit concretelogicpodcast.com and click the donate button to send value back. All dollar amounts are truly appreciated. And now, to close out the show, here's Mike Dunton.
That alarm always sings couple hours before the sun comes up. Open up the side, put some diesel in the lights and wait till the trucks roll up. Yeah, this ain't how most folks live their lives, dripping in sweat, working overtime. But while they're tying their ties for their 9 to 5s, we're out here changing these skylines with wood, iron, and mud. We work hard for $1, give thanks to the Lord above. working hard to get that job done.